When you see someone ruining your child's birthday party and everyone just laughs, it breaks something inside you. My mom works in an office and I know how difficult it is to be a strong woman in situations like this. The story isn't for views, it's about how people really feel. The goal is for you to learn from yourself and not repeat other people's mistakes. All names, addresses, and companies are fictional. Here we go.
I knew something was off when Mallory stepped out of her SUV like she was being photographed by People magazine. Oversized sunglasses, a fake laugh already rolling, one twin yelling about the heat, the other chucking a juice box into my neighbor's flower bed. She swept into my backyard like a hurricane made of glitter and cheap perfume, dragging chaos and entitlement behind her. I was halfway through refilling the lemonade jug when she made a show of air kissing me and said, "Wow, brave of you to go this simple. But hey, kids don't care about quality, right?" I smiled. That taut, overstretched smile women develop after years of swallowing their rage whole. "Glad you made it," I said, handing her the shaded table near the bounce house. It was the spot my son had wanted for himself, but I gave it to her. Because that's what I always do. I hand over peace offerings like they're party favors, trying to keep this crumbling Jenga tower of a family upright just one more hour. Before I go on, if you're still listening and you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to do it. It really helps the team keep going, and if you hit the like button too, I promise it fuels the next story like gasoline on dry wood. Seriously, thank you. Dad sat by the patio, one arm slung around Mom's shoulder like a faded Polaroid. They looked like a couple out of a catalog from the 70s, stoic, tan, slightly detached. Mom had made potato salad no one touched. Dad hummed some nameless tune under his breath. I kept glancing at them between cutting the cake and tying balloons, trying to convince myself we were a normal family, that they'd step in if things got weird, that someone, anyone, would have my back. My boy, 7 years and 3 months old, had been talking about this party for weeks. Every night before bed, will Aunt Mallory be there? Do you think Grandma will bring her dog? Can I help decorate the cake? He made a checklist on our fridge, drawing little rockets beside every item. I laminated it. We bought a small bounce house on sale. I baked cupcakes from scratch. It wasn't a Pinterest-worthy blowout, but it was ours. Honest. Intentional. Loved. Then Mallory's boys, all elbows and screeches, started tearing through the yard like it was a demolition derby. They didn't just step on the decorations, they stomped them on purpose. One of them wiped mustard on the birthday banner. I laughed it off. Tight smile. Deep breath. Keep it together. Mallory tossed her purse on the gift table like it was a garbage can and asked if I had any real snacks. When I gestured toward the food spread, homemade sliders, fruit kebabs, juice, and lemonade, she squinted and said, "Oh wow, this is cute." Very modest. I glanced over at my son, who was mid-laugh in the bounce house, blissfully unaware. I prayed he wouldn't hear any of it. We moved to presents after cake. His face lit up like sunrise. Every unwrapped gift was a little moment of magic, dinosaurs, puzzles, even a spaceship model from a boutique toy shop I'd saved up for. He squealed. Mallory watched like a bored judge on a cooking show. And then, with that same bored expression, she picked up the spaceship, held it up like a wine glass she was inspecting. "These look cheap," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Seriously? Plastic junk." Her twin snorted. Before I could speak, she dropped it. Just opened her fingers like it was a cigarette she was done with. It hit the patio stone and cracked straight down the center. My son's laughter stopped. He blinked once, twice, then looked up at me. And I looked at him. My whole body went ice cold. Mallory laughed. Oops. I glanced toward Dad, toward Mom, even my husband. No one moved. No one said a word. Not even a scolding glance. It was like someone had hit mute on morality. She picked up another gift. I stepped forward, but I didn't speak. My voice had caught somewhere in my throat, thick and sticky. Her twins started tearing into other boxes, giggling like it was Christmas morning. My son backed away and grabbed onto my leg, burying his face into my jeans. He didn't cry. Not yet, but I could feel the tremble in his hands. I didn't shout, didn't scream. I just lifted him into my arms, turned my back to the scene, and carried him inside. From the kitchen window, I watched them all, the people I was born to, the ones I'd spent years defending to therapists and sleep-deprived journal entries, sitting under string lights, sipping lemonade, laughing. Like it was just another day. Like they hadn't just broken something irreparable. Not a toy. A line. A rule. A bond. And I remember thinking, as I locked the sliding glass door behind me, this wasn't a crack. This was the start of the fault line. After cake, the sun had dipped just enough to cool the air, and the yard glowed with that soft early evening light that makes everything look better than it is. My son had icing on his nose and joy smeared across his face as he reached for the first wrapped gift. The bounce house was deflated. The kids gathered around like satellites orbiting his happiness. For a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe Mallory wouldn't ruin it. Maybe she'd let him have this one thing. Just one. The first package was a puzzle, dinosaurs, his favorite. I love it, he shouted, holding it up. The next was a remote control car, blue with racing stripes. He gasped and ran it across the pavement, laughing when it turned too fast and spun out. Everyone clapped. Well, almost everyone. Then came the spaceship. He unwrapped it like it was glass, which, ironically, it partly was. A detailed model we'd saved up for, ordered from a small shop that specialized in educational toys. He had talked about it for weeks. Mallory stood over him, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick like she was watching a bad play. "These look cheap," she said, loud enough for the table to go silent. "Seriously? Plastic junk." Her boys snickered like hyenas. One of them burped. The other grabbed a cupcake and smushed it into his palm just to feel it ooze. I looked at her, blinking. "What did you say?" Mallory picked up the spaceship with 2 fingers like it was a dead rat. "This one? Looks like something from a dollar store clearance bin." "Please don't," I started, but before I could finish, she dropped it. It cracked hard against the patio. One wing snapped clean off. The base cracked. A tiny solar panel popped loose and bounced under the table. My son's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I froze. He froze. For a second, it was like the whole party had been unplugged. Then, like nothing had happened, she reached for another gift. A telescope. Something we'd found secondhand and restored together, piece by piece. I could feel my jaw locking, my throat tightening, and no one moved. My husband glanced over, then quickly looked back down at his phone. My mom didn't even lift her eyes. My dad just stared straight ahead. Didn't flinch. Didn't frown. Didn't breathe, from what I could tell. She picked it up. My boy stepped forward, just one small footstep, and said, "Please don't break that." Mallory laughed. "Oh my God, calm down. I'm not a monster." She didn't drop it. Not that one. But the message had been sent, loud and clear. The other kids laughed. My son looked at the cracked spaceship on the ground, then at me. He didn't cry. He just blinked and leaned into my side like his whole body was trying to disappear into mine. I should have screamed. I should have flipped the table. I should have hurled Mallory out of my yard and burned every bridge on the way. But instead, I stood there, silent, watching. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't mean peace. It means every alarm is ringing inside your chest, but your face hasn't caught up yet. That's where I was. And I hated myself for it. Mallory tossed the telescope back onto the table like a used napkin and said, "Anyway, when's piñata time?" Her twins cheered like nothing happened. My boy squeezed my hand like it was his lifeline, like I was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. And I realized I was. I was the only one who could protect him. But somehow, even I hadn't. Not yet. She tossed it like she was pitching garbage, some little robot building kit he'd been eyeing at the library gift shop. We saved for it. I wrapped it in tissue paper and watched him carry it to the table like it was sacred. And she just chucked it right into the hedges, like it offended her. Her boys followed like wolves in a pack, tearing through the remaining presents, shouting over each other. "What else can we smash?" "Hey, this one's already broken." One of them laughed so hard he fell over, knocking the gift table sideways. A wrapped book slid into the grass. My son winced like it was a gunshot. And I just stood there, paralyzed, while the bouncy house sagged behind them like even it had given up. He clung to my leg quiet, shaking. Not crying yet, just holding on like the world had started to tilt. His tiny hand gripped my thigh like a drowning man on driftwood. I could feel his breath hitching, those little stutters kids make when they're too sad to understand why. I didn't shout. I didn't beg them to stop. I didn't even speak. I bent down, wrapped my arms around him, and picked him up. He wrapped his arms around my neck without a word. His head dropped to my shoulder. My shirt soaked up a tear I didn't even see fall. I carried him across the yard, stepping over scattered gift wrap and crushed cupcakes, and opened the back door. The laughter followed us like smoke. I closed the door. Inside, the air felt too quiet. I walked him to the couch and sat down, holding him like he was still 2 years old. He didn't want a blanket. He didn't want a drink. He just wanted me to hold him and not let go. From the living room window, I could see them, my entire family. Mallory refilling her lemonade, flipping her hair, still talking like she was hosting a talk show. My mother wiping crumbs off a plate, smiling as Mallory mimicked my son's voice. My dad, sitting there, not speaking, not frowning, just blank, like he'd powered down. The gift table was wrecked. Ribbons everywhere. Tissue paper like battlefield debris. One of the twins was stabbing a juice box with a fork. And they laughed. God, they laughed. The kind of laugh that punctures your illusions in one clean strike. Like, of course they don't care. Like, what did you expect? I could have gone back out there. I could have yelled until I lost my voice. I could have made a scene, thrown them all out, ripped the tablecloth off the table like some dinner theater meltdown. But I didn't. I watched. I watched through that window with my son's breath warm against my neck and the ache in my chest blooming like wildfire. Because I finally understood. Nothing I did, no party, no cupcakes, no careful seating charts or laminated checklists, was ever going to make them decent. They were who they were. And I'd been pretending otherwise for far too long. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me, something soft and hopeful, gave way like a rotted beam in an old house. It didn't make a sound, but it never came back. After the last car door slammed and the headlights disappeared down the street, I stood at the edge of the yard with a trash bag in one hand and a broken toy wing in the other. The quiet was brutal. No more laughing. No more rustling paper or bouncing kids or Mallory's voice dominating the air like she owned it. Just the hum of a distant street lamp and the sharp sting of knowing I had let my son's birthday become a crime scene nobody acknowledged. I walked through the battlefield, pieces of wrapping paper stuck to cupcake frosting, juice boxes half crushed into the lawn, the crumpled tissue from the spaceship still wet with lemonade. I picked up the telescope and found a crack running along its base, like even it had given up holding itself together. I placed it gently into the box labeled salvage and moved on to triage the rest. Inside, the house was still. My son was asleep on the couch, his face turned into the pillow like he didn't want the world to see him anymore. I pulled a blanket over him and stood there, staring, not sure if I felt more like his mother or his failed security system. My husband was in the kitchen, sipping wine like he hadn't just witnessed our child get humiliated and emotionally gut-punched in front of everyone we're supposed to trust. "You okay?" he asked, quiet. I didn't answer. Because what the hell kind of question was that? He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just stood still during it all. Like maybe if we didn't react, it wouldn't count as damage. Like staying neutral somehow keeps you clean. But that's the thing, silence doesn't absolve you. It just hands the power to the person yelling loudest. And tonight, that person had been Mallory. When the dishes were done and the house was fake clean again, I sat on the living room floor and opened the photo albums. The digital ones. The ones I hadn't touched in months. Birthday after birthday. Year after year. Mallory making fun of the themes I picked. Laughing about my try-hard mom energy. Her kids blowing out the candles before mine could make a wish. Dad chuckling. Mom shrugging. Nobody ever stepping in. Not once. I watched one old video, my son's 5th birthday. He was trying to show his new toy dragon to my mother. Mallory's boys ripped it from his hands and flung it into the kiddie pool. He cried. My mom looked at him and said, "Oh, honey, it's just a toy." Another birthday, Mallory mocking the homemade banner I stayed up all night making. "Looks like a Pinterest fail," she had said, loud and laughing. Why had I forgotten all this? No, not forgotten. Buried. Rationalized. Minimized. Because I wanted a family. Because I wanted to believe they meant well. Because I needed the story to stay whole. I opened my text threads with Mom. Every message she'd sent the night before a family event. "Don't overreact if Mallory jokes again. Let's keep the peace. She means well, you're just more sensitive." Even my husband's replies when I tried to vent. "That's just how your sister is. Don't let her get to you. You know she loves the attention." Yeah, well, attention's a hell of a drug. And no one ever makes the addict stop when the audience keeps clapping. I scrolled through all of it until the screen blurred. Until my chest hurt. It wasn't about the toys. Or the party. Or the cake. It was about the ecosystem. The unspoken rules. The way Mallory could humiliate a child and everyone's instinct was to smooth it over, not stop it. And I'd been part of it. Every time I didn't scream. Every time I played peacemaker. Every time I handed her the good seat and let her win. I wasn't innocent. But I was done pretending I didn't see it. It was almost 3 weeks later when I opened the message from our neighbor, Kim. "Thought you might want this," she wrote. Caught it while I was filming the kids in the bounce house. No caption. Just a video file. I didn't open it right away. I was in the middle of folding laundry. My son's favorite Rocket pajamas. The ones we barely got to wash because he wore them every night since the party. I tucked them under his pillow and sat on the edge of my bed. My phone was still glowing. Curiosity gnawed at me until I gave in. The video opened with a shaky view of the bounce house, kids jumping like popcorn. But the camera slowly tilted left, catching the gift table. Mallory, standing like she owned the place, spaceship in hand. Then the drop. I felt my stomach clench all over again. The sound was sharp, even through the screen, the toy hitting pavement and cracking like a dry bone. My son's voice didn't even register in the chaos. There were just laughs. Her boys high-fiving. Mallory doing that awful shoulder-shaking laugh she does when she's proud of being awful. But that wasn't what gripped me. In the corner, barely in frame, was my father. He wasn't watching Mallory. He was watching Mom. First, he smiled. Not a kind smile. The kind you wear when something inside you snaps, but you've already run out of words. Then he reached into his pocket. Not his front one, his hip pocket. The one where he always kept his ring when he worked with tools. Except he hadn't fixed a damn thing in years. And then, as calm as if he were adjusting his watch, he slipped the wedding band off his finger. He set it on the table next to his lemonade. Mom didn't look at him. She just kept nodding along with whatever Mallory was saying. Like she didn't notice. Like that gesture wasn't the quietest scream in the world. And then, barely audible, but there it was. For words. "I'm done with this." I paused the video. Rewound it. Turned the volume all the way up. Played it again. Same soft delivery. Same haunted clarity. "I'm done with this." He wasn't angry. He wasn't crying. He sounded like a man who'd spent 4 decades in a room with no windows and had finally found the door. I stared at the screen. The party froze in that moment. Mallory mid-laugh. My son mid-grief. My mom mid-denial. And Dad mid-departure. My fingers hovered over the phone. I thought about texting him. Thought about calling. But instead, I sat there and let the reality sink in. All my life, I thought he was the stable one. The anchor. The guy who held everything together while the rest of us screamed and slammed doors. The quiet hum in the background, steady as ceiling fan blades. But maybe that hum wasn't peace. Maybe it was the sound of someone waiting. Waiting for the last straw. For a moment so grotesque, so devoid of decency, that even he couldn't stay silent. Mallory had laughed. Mom had nodded. And Dad had finally left. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, he had crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. And suddenly, everything I thought was solid, every assumption about who my parents were, what they stood for, how they endured, felt like sand underfoot. He'd watched a 7-year-old boy have his heart shattered and said nothing. But he said it now, to himself. I'm done with this. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't the only one who had been pretending. Not by a long shot. I waited until the house was quiet, really quiet. Not just the absence of sound, but the kind where even the walls feel like they're holding their breath. My husband was asleep on the couch again, TV still glowing, a half-finished beer balanced on his stomach like some kind of peace treaty he'd forgotten to sign. My son was curled up in bed, finally sleeping without kicking or murmuring. And I stood in the hallway with the video still paused on my phone, Dad's face frozen mid-exit. I called him. He picked up on the first ring. No hello. No small talk. Just, I shouldn't have let that happen. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Like he'd been carrying something for 100 years and had finally put it down. I watched it, I said. I figured you would, he replied. I didn't think Kim caught that. Silence stretched, but it wasn't awkward. It felt like we were standing on the same shore for the first time in our lives. You said you were done. I was done years ago, he said. That day just ended the script. You ever have a dream that keeps looping? Same beginning, same middle, same awful end? You wake up sweating, and even though you're safe, you're mad at yourself for going through it again. Every year on your anniversary, I whispered. He gave a short laugh. Yeah, that tracks. 3 days later, he moved out. Just gone. No fight. No shouting. No late-night suitcase packing or slammed doors. He waited until a Tuesday, drove to the bank, then called a moving service. Took his things while Mom was at her book club and left a typed note on the counter. All it said was, I love you. I don't want to hate you. So I have to go. Mom didn't cry, didn't scream. She called a family meeting and told everyone he needed space to reflect. Like he was off at some silent retreat in the woods, not reclaiming decades of swallowed pride. Mallory called me 30 minutes after the meeting ended. You happy now? She snapped, voice sharp and shallow. You broke Dad. You broke the whole damn family with your constant whining and your, what is it, emotional hypersensitivity. I didn't respond. She kept going. You act like you're better than the rest of us because you read parenting books and decorate with chalkboards and have feelings about feelings. You want a medal for being gentle? For caring? Look where it got you. Dad's gone, Mom's a mess, and you're raising a little snowflake who's gonna grow up afraid of his own shadow. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words. I had enough to burn her whole life down with surgical precision. But I didn't need to anymore. She wasn't attacking me. She was scrambling, flailing, because someone had finally cracked the glass she danced on. And it wasn't me, it was Dad, her one untouchable audience member, her default applause track, her silent co-signer. And now he was gone. That night, I sat with my son on the living room rug and helped him reassemble the broken spaceship with glue and tweezers. We didn't say much, just worked quietly, patiently. It didn't look the same when we finished. Some cracks were too visible. Some parts no longer fit quite right. But it stood. It stood on its own. And so did I. I parked halfway down the block, watching the house through the windshield like it was some stage set I wasn't quite ready to enter. The porch lights were already on, the shadows of people passing in and out of the front window. Laughter floated down the street, too loud, too performative. Like a sitcom laugh track turned up one notch too high. I waited until the ham would be sliced, the wine half drunk, and the noise just enough to cushion my silence. Then I walked up the drive. Alone. Mallory opened the door, arms wide, all pageant smile and faux warmth. There she is, she said like we'd had lunch last week. You're late. You missed the prayer. And Mom made that cranberry thing you like, even though no one else touches it. I walked past her without a word. She didn't stop me. She just kept talking, trying to steer the atmosphere like she always did. You didn't bring your little guy? She asked, loud enough for a few relatives to turn their heads. I didn't answer. I carried a small gift bag in both hands like it was fragile, and it was. The repaired spaceship. Glued with care, every crack sealed, lacquered until it gleamed under the entryway chandelier. The base was mounted in glass. A small brass plaque at the bottom read, "Reentry." Mom was in the dining room, fussing with napkins she'd already placed 10 times. Her smile tightened when she saw me, then softened when she saw the bag. "I didn't expect you to come," she said, voice low. I handed her the gift. She opened it gently, lifting the spaceship like it was a relic. For a moment, she didn't speak, just stared at it, fingers tracing the tiny grooves. I watched her mouth move, one word forming and dying before it left her lips. Then finally, she whispered, "You're not bringing your son?" I met her eyes. "Not until he's safe here." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. Simple. Final. She blinked, looked down at the spaceship again. The cracks, though polished, were still visible. You couldn't miss them. I turned and walked toward the living room, pausing just long enough to let the tension settle like dust behind me. Mallory was already at the wine, telling someone I stormed in with a shrine to a plastic toy. I didn't flinch. I didn't correct her, because it didn't matter anymore. She wanted chaos. She fed on it. I'd stopped feeding her. In the corner, one of my cousins caught my eye. She gave a small nod. Not approval. Not pity. Just acknowledgement. Like she saw it. Finally, the shift. I stayed an hour. Long enough to make my presence undeniable. Short enough to leave before Mallory's stories turned crueler, louder, more performative. As I grabbed my coat, I passed the dining room again. Mom was still holding the spaceship, her hand trembling just slightly. I didn't say goodbye. I just stepped back into the cold night air, letting the warmth of the house fall behind me like a curtain closing. Because some dinners aren't worth staying for. And some silences speak louder than slamming doors. It snowed the week before Christmas. The heavy kind that quiets everything, coats the trees in stillness, makes even the ugliest street look poetic. I was on the porch shoveling when my phone buzzed, no fanfare, just a ping and a subject line. Final petition filed. Dad had sent it. 42 years of marriage, a lifetime of holidays and routines and quiet Sunday coffee. And he ended it with a digital file and a signature at the bottom. No demands. No dramatic explanations. Just clean severance. I sat on the porch steps, gloves still on, and read it twice. Mom called 2 hours later. Her voice was sharp, clipped at the edges like paper that's been torn instead of cut. "Your father's lost his mind," she said. No hello. No acknowledgement. Just blame, deflected like a bad tennis serve. "I'm guessing he didn't tell you he bought a place on the lake," she continued. "Tiny. Rustic. Ridiculous." I said nothing. "He says he needs peace. Space. Freedom. He says he's tired of the noise." "And do you know what your sister said?" "She said it's your fault. That you've poisoned him." I could hear the tears she was refusing to let fall. "He mailed me a single box of his sweaters and the screwdriver I bought him in 1998, she added, almost to herself. Like that's all our life was worth. That was the last call we had before Christmas. A few days later, a package arrived addressed to my son. No return name, just the new address scrawled in Dad's handwriting. Inside, a wooden model rocket kit, nestled in tissue paper like a relic. And a note. "Build something better than what we broke." My son stared at it for a long time before asking, "Can we go see him?" "Soon," I said. Meanwhile, Mallory was on a full PR tour. She hosted a Christmas Eve gathering, full-blown spectacle. Sent out invites with a theme. Forced the kids into matching pajamas for Instagram. Had a hot chocolate bar with a chalkboard sign that said Santa's Sweet Station. And yet, the room wasn't as full this year. People came, but they didn't linger. Conversations drifted to side rooms. A few cousins left early. One uncle told me quietly in the kitchen, "Whatever happened at that birthday party?" It opened some eyes. We all saw it. Mallory cornered me near the hallway with a wine glass and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You should stop acting like you're some kind of hero," she said, voice low but venom-tipped. "You got what you wanted, Dad gone, Mom heartbroken, and me painted as the villain." I met her eyes. Calm. Steady. "I didn't paint anything," I said. "You just hate how visible the cracks are now." She scoffed and turned back to the living room, laughing louder than she needed to. But it wasn't the same. The center of gravity had shifted. No shouting, no fireworks, just gravity, realignment, quiet choices adding up, people noticing things they'd always ignored. That it wasn't about one bad party or one broken toy. It was about years, habits, the way Mallory always managed to be the loudest, and how we all confused that with being right. I stayed for a while, then left without saying goodbye. Drove home through snow-lined streets, the rocket kit seat-belted in the back beside my sleeping son. Something had cracked open this year, but not everything that breaks stays broken. Some things let the light in. Spring came early that year. The kind where the air doesn't ask permission, it just arrives, soft and warm, carrying the scent of thawed earth and lake water. My son turned 8 in March. No balloons. No bounce house. No cousins tearing through wrapping paper like wolves. Just a small overnight bag, a cooler packed with sandwiches, and a new ritual neither of us had a name for yet. Dad's cabin sat just beyond the tree line, nestled between soft hills and a lake that still held a thin skin of ice around the edges. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms and a porch, but it felt more like home than anywhere we'd been lately. The windows didn't quite close all the way. The floor creaked in full sentences. And there was this quiet about it. Not silence. Not absence. Just quiet that didn't require armor. My son ran down the dock like he belonged there. He did. Dad stood by the workbench out back, sleeves rolled, waiting with a pile of soft pine, a small hammer, and the blueprint for a rocket launch pad they'd drawn together over the phone. He smiled when he saw us, and I swear, for a second, I saw the version of him I remembered from when I was 7. Not tired. Not polite. Not just surviving. Alive. Ready to build something? He asked. My son nodded. He dropped his backpack on the porch, grabbed the hammer, and got to work like he'd been waiting all year to put something back together. They didn't talk much. Just worked. Measured. Cut. Aligned. Nails tapped gently into wood, crooked smiles exchanged when things didn't fit the first time. I watched from the porch with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a kind of quiet that filled the hollow I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. By late afternoon, they had something that resembled a launch ramp. Painted red. A little lopsided. Perfect. We waited until the breeze settled, then placed the new spaceship, a kit my dad had found from a hobby store 2 towns over, on the stand. My son counted down. Dad handed him the ignition switch. 3, 2, 1. And up it went. Clean. Bright. Fast. We craned our necks and watched it arc against the pale blue sky. My son laughed, big, belly deep, unguarded. And I felt something loosen in my chest. Not everything that breaks stays broken. Sometimes, it clears the way for something sturdier. As the rocket's trail faded and the wind picked up again, I looked at my dad, his hands stained with paint, his face smudged with sawdust, and then at my son, holding that tiny remote like he'd just touched the sky. Some families are inherited. Others are constructed. One board at a time. This one we build from scratch. No pieces missing this time.